It has been 7 years since the last launch at Queenstown MRT, Stirling Residences back in 2017, and now Penrith is here, the last residential plot that is near the MRT station. So first, we will actually start off with some basic project information, some key facts that you want to know upfront, and then we'll dive into how Penrith is actually different from surrounding resale projects. There's a lot to talk about Queenstown, but I'll show you why this site really stands out. And the third part is what everybody is usually curious about, right? Is the pricing. What kind of PSF and quantum are we looking at, and how does it compare to the recent launches nearby? And then after that, I will touch on what's next after Penrith, because if this isn't what you're looking for, it's good to know what other launches are on the horizon. And lastly, I'll save the best for last, and I will share with you the VIP and loyalty program by Hong Leong, and this can make a real difference, especially if you're eligible for priority booking or extra perks as a repeated buyer. So Penrith is a 99-year leasehold project by Hong Leong Holdings and GuocoLand, the two developers with very strong track records in Singapore, and this project sits along Margaret Drive, which is in District 3 in the heart of Queenstown. The development has actually 2 towers of 40 stories each with a total of 462 units. There will also be a basement car park and 2 levels of multi-story car park, and also a 500 square meters early childhood development center. And that is a nice touch for families who are planning to stay here for the long term. So unit types here will be 2-bedders all the way to 4-bedders. Based on my assumption with the GFA harmonization guidelines, you can expect higher efficiency in terms of layouts and less wasted space as compared to the older projects. And what is most important here is that this is a 4-minute walk to Queenstown MRT. It is about 316 meters, which makes it one of the most conveniently located new launches in the city fringe today. So now if we compare Penrith to Commonwealth Towers or Queen's Peak, there is actually quite a big difference. So both of these projects are actually sitting right beside the MRT track and along with a full multi-lane road. So if your unit faces towards this side, right, you are definitely going to pick up the train noise or the traffic. So Penrith, on the other hand, is a little bit more shielded. So from the way that the blocks are actually positioned, you actually get some buffer that cuts off some of the noise from the road and the MRT line, and it would definitely make it a little bit more comfortable for the residents, especially if you're somebody who is a little bit more sensitive to sound. When it comes to the unit mix, like I said, Penrith only offers 2 to 4 bedroom layouts. There are no 1-bedders over here, which would naturally mean that there will be fewer pure investors chasing rental use. Instead, this project makes it more geared towards family and own stay buyers. However, let me put a quick disclaimer. All these details are still subjected to change. I don't have the finalized floor plans yet, so do stay tuned for my part 2 video where I'll do the proper floor plan analysis and the full-fledged analysis in the same way that I've covered for other projects in my channel. So why am I showing you the unit mix? So if I put myself in the shoes of someone who is looking to buy in the area of Queenstown, right, the real question is, how would Penrith be different from the surrounding projects? And it actually matters because if you look at around Queenstown, they got quite a few sizable projects that are not that old. So right next to the MRT, you have Commonwealth Towers, you have Queen's Peak, and plus Stirling Residences with over 1,200 units. And just up the road, you have Margaret Ville. So when you actually add everything together, including Penrith, right, we are looking at about 3,600 over units in this area alone. And the thing is, Penrith won't be ready in another 3 to 4 years. So the natural question is, does it make sense to buy into one of these resale projects instead, since they are still under 10 years old? And in terms of convenience, they are not very different from Penrith. So let's dive into the unit size. I've lined up Penrith alongside with the surrounding projects by unit type so that we have a fair comparison. The reason why I want to do this is simple. Whether you are deciding between buying a resale unit here today or planning ahead to eventually sell your Penrith in the future, the competition around you is going to matter. Understanding the size and the layout differences will tell us a lot about how the buyers in this area will make their decision. So like I mentioned earlier, Penrith only have 2 to 4 bedroom units, and while I don't have the final layouts yet, just by comparing the size ranges, right, one thing becomes very clear. Penrith units are actually smaller than the past resale projects nearby. And actually the first question that comes to mind is that, doesn't it make the resale projects today a better buy since they are bigger in size and rather new? To be honest, I would have the same concern. So this is why I wanted to break down further from unit sizes all the way down to layouts so that we can see the real picture and the kind of demographics Penrith is likely to attract. So firstly, let's use the 2-bedroom units as a starting point. I've broken them down into 2-bed 1-bath and 2-bed 2-bath and 2+ study. I've also included the median per square foot and the highest per square foot transacted over the past 6 months so that the numbers we are looking at are actually more current and relevant. So we take Stirling Residences as an example. It is the newest among these resale projects, TOP in the year 2022. The 2-bed 1-bath sizes range from 624 to 657 square feet, while the 2-bed 2-bath is slightly bigger at 678 square feet and 689 square feet, and the 2-bed plus study ranges from 764 square feet to 786 square feet. So when we compare that to Commonwealth Towers, which TOP in 2017, their 2-bedder start at 689 square feet and can go all the way up to 797 square feet. So across the board, right, they are already larger than what you can typically find at Stirling Residences. Next, we look at Queen's Peak TOP in 2020. The 2-bed 1-bath comes in at 624 square feet and the 2-bed 2-bath comes in at 775 square feet. And lastly, we have Margaret Ville, which TOP in 2021. Slightly further away from the MRT, the 2-bedders are sized at 657 square feet for the 2-bed 1-bath and 700 square feet for the 2-bed 2-bath. So the reason why I'm laying this out is because it's very natural for us to think that the newer the project, the higher the per square foot. But when we actually factor in the size difference and also the layout efficiency, the comparison will be a little bit more meaningful. So when we look at the price trend and growth, right, Stirling Residences and Commonwealth Towers has clearly outperformed the other two projects over here. So for example, the highest 2-bed 2-bath transaction in Stirling Residences have already hit 2,600 over per square foot, while Commonwealth Towers have reached 2,300 per square foot. And once I lay out the floor plan side by side, the reason becomes clearer. Take Stirling Residences first. Even though the 2-bed 2-bath is only 689 square feet, which is actually on the smaller end, the layout is pretty efficient. You get a semi-enclosed kitchen, which is something that is missing from the rest of the projects. And the common bedroom here in Stirling Residences can at least fit a queen size bed. So when we compare that to Queen's Peak, right, at 775 square feet, which is the largest of this group, but surprisingly the second bedroom can only take a single bed. So the extra size doesn't really translate into usable space. So as for Margaret Ville, right, the 2-bed 2-bath is at 700 square feet. The second bedroom, it does allow a queen size bed, but it's also tucked to one corner. It will definitely make the room feel tighter. So that's where Stirling Residences and Commonwealth Towers stand out. Even though their units are not the most spacious, their layouts are practical because both bedrooms can fit a queen bed and side tables, and that livability is what helps drive stronger resale demands and higher per square foot. And this is why when we look at Penrith's upcoming 2-bedders at 614 square feet to 678 square feet, the real question is not really about size, it's about whether the layouts will be efficient to hold its value the way that Stirling and Commonwealth have proven. So now when we move on to the 2-bed 1-bath layout, something very interesting comes up, right? Both Stirling Residences and Queen's Peak both are at the same size of 624 square feet, yet the layout is completely different. At Stirling Residences, right, the second bedroom can comfortably fit a queen bed, while over at Queen's Peak, the same common bedroom can only fit a single bed, and that makes a big difference on livability. 2-bedders are usually the sweet spot for younger first-time buyers or even those who are downsizing. So when you are comparing the floor plan side by side, it is easy to see why layouts like Stirling are so popular. And this also explains in numbers, right? Even though Stirling commands one of the highest per square foot prices, buyers are still willing to pay because the layout just works better for real life living and is simply more practical and more livable than the alternatives around. So when we look at these floor plans, right, it is clear to say that even though Penrith sizes are smaller as compared to the older projects, it doesn't automatically mean that buyers are being shortchanged, because we also need to think ahead, right? By the time Penrith completes in about 4 years, the surrounding resale projects would already be crossing about the 10-year mark. So in terms of property, right, the age gap makes a big difference. Buyers will naturally compare something brand new against something that is already a decade old. Another important point to point out is that all these older projects were built before the GFA harmonization ruling. So back in the days, right, developer could push out things like bigger balconies and oversized aircon ledges. So while the unit does look larger on paper, not all of it translates to true usable space. Penrith, on the other hand, will be the first GFA harmonized project in Queenstown, and that would definitely mean the layouts are designed to be more efficient. Every dollar that you're paying goes towards usable space inside of the home. Of course, at the end of the day, the layout still matters more than the raw size. Bigger doesn't always mean better. Sometimes a smaller but smarter design can be far more livable, and that's what has been driving the resale prices at projects like Stirling Residences. Of course, at this point, again, we do not have Penrith's final layout yet, but the fact that it is harmonized is already a strong signal that we will be seeing more efficient designs as compared to non-harmonized projects in the past. Because Penrith's units are generally smaller, it is natural that the per square foot could end up higher, but that doesn't mean that the surrounding resale projects are undervalued. In fact, in today's comparison, it already shows the difference quite clearly. I won't be going to all the individual layouts here because since we don't have the full floor plans of Penrith to be comparing with, so I will do that in part 2 of my video, and that's where I'll break things down into more detail by unit type once the full floor plans are out. And if you're specifically looking at the 3 or 4 bedder and you want a deeper analysis sooner, feel free to reach out to me directly through my contact methods below. So now let's take a look at what's after Penrith. If you look at this map, Penrith sits right here. It is about 3 to 4 minutes walk to Queenstown MRT, and the other future residential plots on top over here that may come up in the future are positioned further away from the train station. Now at this point of time, we do not know whether they are private properties or BTO. It could be both. So that is why Penrith is so significant. It is very likely the last and closest government land sale plot to the Queenstown MRT. And because the upcoming sites are less conveniently located, Penrith could also end up being the most affordable MRT fronting option that you actually see here. Of course, the other plots of land are not released for bidding yet, but the positioning already makes the difference quite clear. If we look into the most recent government land sale, they already gave us a pretty clear preview of how the future pricing will be like. So for example, Bayshore Road at OCR was awarded $1,388 per square foot per plot ratio, and Chuan Grove in the OCR came in at similar levels of $1,376 per square foot per plot ratio. And with these land costs, right, developers are likely to be launching at around $2,000 to $2,800 per square foot on average. So if let's say today an OCR project is already heading towards that price point, it then raises the question, what will happen when we look at launches at a more central area, city fringe location like Margaret Drive? Naturally, the prices here will be expected to push even higher. So if we look at the recent RCR launch, projects like the Hill at One North and Emerald of Katong are already averaging around 2,500 to 2,600 per square foot. Even in the OCR, right, where projects are further out, projects like Jayden, Elta and Chuan Park, they have already transacted at an average of 2,400 to about $2,600 per square foot range. Let's say we follow this trend, my estimate that Penrith could likely launch at around $2,600 to $2,800 per square foot on the higher floors. And honestly, even at this level, right, it is still in line with what the buyers have already accepted for the recent RCR launch, meaning the market has shown that it's comfortable at this pricing. We should also not forget that the last launch here in Queenstown is Stirling Residences, which is actually in 2018. And during that period, cooling measures were suddenly announced and the show flat was packed with buyers who were rushing to secure a unit. And that was actually 7 years ago. And since then, right, there hasn't been a single launch at Queenstown MRT, which is why I believe there's such a huge pent-up demand building up for Penrith. And let's not forget, Queenstown has also one of the highest number of HDBs crossing the $1 million mark, with some of them even hitting 1.5 to 1.6 million. With such a large pool of well-capitalized HDB owners in the area, I believe a good portion of them will naturally be looking at Penrith as their next step up. What stands out is that Penrith probably enjoys the best unblocked panoramic views in the Queenstown area. Previously, Queen's Peak, they actually get to enjoy this advantage where they actually look over Queenstown Primary, which has a low plot ratio. Higher floors there will get to enjoy these open, wide, landed views. But with Penrith now rising in front, many of those views in Queen's Peak will inevitably be blocked. And that shifts the advantage to Penrith, especially for the stacks facing outwards towards the low-rise landed and the GCB-A zones. From the north facing of Penrith, right, you will actually look towards the GCB-A areas, some heritage bungalows along Kay Siang Road, and it even stretches towards the Dempsey and also the Botanical Garden areas. Overall, it's quite a pleasant and open view, although I should add a quick disclaimer that this is just an estimation based on the stack and floor level that you choose. Naturally, the higher you go, the better view you will get. Although Penrith enjoys unblocked view towards the landed cluster, we need to be a little bit more realistic. If the government land sale plot nearby eventually gets sold and developed, there is a possibility that the mid-floor units at Penrith could have their views partially blocked. It is because of these future land plots, right, that allows up to 24 stories. Although for now there is no confirmation on when this land will be released for sale, whether it's to private or HDB, the timeline remains pretty uncertain at this point. Now, before I wrap up, I want to highlight something that could make a real difference if you're planning to buy Penrith, and that is the loyalty and priority booking. This is how it works. If you're an existing or even an ex-owner of properties developed by GuocoLand, Hong Leong, Hong Realty, Tripartite or TID, you qualify under what's called the Loyalty Purchase Scheme, and that means that you will get to enjoy priority access before the project is actually released to the public, and yes, often with special privileges as well seen in the past projects. On top of that, there is the one-tier relationship eligibility, and this extends to immediate family members, your spouse, your parents, your siblings or your children. And what this essentially means that if you have direct relationship with someone who qualifies, you could still enjoy these early privileges. So why does this matter? Because in new launches, right, early access often means that you get the first pick of the best stacks and sometimes even a better entry price before the public crowd actually comes in. And if you have been following the past GuocoLand or Hong Leong launches, you will know that this priority booking has saved buyers not just in terms of stress, but also probably about 1% of the purchase price, which we will know in time to come. If you want to have the full list of qualifying projects to check if you are eligible, you can DM me and I will share it with you directly. In summary, Penrith really stands out in Queenstown. It is just a 4 minutes walk to the MRT, yet it also avoids the heavy traffic noise that some projects nearby will face. With its north-south orientation, most stacks will not get the harsh afternoon sun, and the higher floors can definitely look forward to the sweeping views of the good class bungalow areas. Again, it's worth noting that this is the first GFA harmonized project in this area, which could translate into so much more efficient layouts as compared to the old resale projects. And being the last residential plot so close to Queenstown MRT, it carries a certain rarity value that buyers are often looking for. And when we look into the future, there's also a strong upgrader pull from the many million-dollar HDBs in Queenstown, which gives me the confidence in the project's exit potential. And the preview for Penrith actually starts on 3rd of October, with the launch expected to be around 18th of October. If you like to have a private walkthrough of the show flat or have a more tailored analysis based on your own objectives, please feel free to reach to me directly directly, my contact methods are below. And since we do not have the full floor plans or the micro details yet, do stay tuned for part 2 of my video where I'll dive into the layouts and share more of my thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe and join my Telegram channel, and I'll see you in the next video.